Welcome to the next in the series of films. This time I'm going to discuss barrier isolation and containment and its use in the pharmaceutical and chemical industries. In this feature, we will take a look at why this technology is increasingly necessary, how systems are put together, how they will benefit you, and finally, using this technology will finally benefit your organisation. What is containment and why do we need it in pharmaceutical production? Well, it all comes back to understanding how pharmaceutical products are manufactured. In previous shows, we explained that finished pharmaceutical products, tablets, etc., are made up of excipients, non-active ingredients, and active pharmaceutical ingredients. The ingredient that causes the biggest problem is the active pharmaceutical ingredient. If you consider the manufacturing process, the quantities of active materials required are large for the manufacturer. But in reality, the dose for the patient is very small. This means that staff handling the product can only be exposed to a very small quantity, the active ingredient. This is at a point where the product will do no harm to the operator. This is called the operator exposure limit. For some potent compounds, that can be in nanogram levels. To understand what that means, take an Olympic-sized swimming pool and add 1 grain of salt. That would be a typical concentration level, meaning that it's at a point where you cannot see the API or detect it without special equipment. That means that conventional technology, such as putting someone in a safety suit or wearing a mask, simply will not work. Add this to current European legislation, where it should be the last resort to put an operator in personal protective equipment, and worse still, for sterile productions where the human operator is the biggest carrier of contaminants, and you have a huge problem. This is where barrier isolation technology comes in. Barrier isolation technology does exactly what it says. It forms a barrier between the product being produced and the operator or engineer operating or maintaining the process. Therefore, it protects both the product from sources of contamination or biological matter, which is good for us patients, and it protects the operator or engineers who use the facilities, which is good for them. So how do we decide if we need an isolator? Well, simple. All chemical compounds, and in particular active pharmaceutical ingredients, have a limit below which they have no effect on the human body. This is known as the OEL, or operator exposure limit. To aid companies further, simple occupational exposure bands were developed to simplify the point at which isolation technology should be used, i.e. to keep things in. For sterile systems, we also need to protect the product from microbiological contamination from the outside. Sterility of the product, in very simple terms, based on the number of particles in the air, at sterile levels this is incredibly low, and the isolator needs to work in reverse, i.e. keep things out. Well, an isolator is in effect a small room through which you access the process. There are 2 ways to do this. The first and most common is via glove ports. They benefit from being simple to use and easy to replace. However, when something becomes large, heavy, or difficult to manipulate, then we have a further option. That is the use of a half bodysuit. This is a simple bubble into the isolator, but it gives much more freedom, reach, and lifting abilities for the operator. So how do we arrive at the right solution for any given process or item of equipment? Well, that is where the skill of the design team comes in. And there is no one way of building these systems. Yes, there are common elements that I'll discuss later, but there is no one way. Today's 3D modelling techniques will help the design team quickly establish a good working model. On the simplest systems, airlocks will be used. Then we move to interlocked airlocks with pressure gradients, then onto rapid transfer ports. For toxic products, naturally we are trying to keep things in, so in general they are held at negative pressure. Now for sterile isolators we have a different set of problems, because these isolators tend to keep products out. By reversing the airflow, we pressurize the system into positive pressure. The airflow plays a critical element inside these isolators, so we may use both laminar flow or turbulent airflow, which is critical. Barrier isolation can benefit your business in many ways, including simplifying your process, giving you closed systems with no cross-contamination, safe process manipulation, more operator comfort, much more rapid batch turnarounds, freedom of staff to move, increased productivity, less waste generation, processing of toxic and sterile products, reduced revenue and capital cost, and reduced failures. I hope you have found this show both challenging and fascinating, and you have learned that this subject is not simple but requires significant skill and expertise to get it right, and that there is no one way of tackling a problem. Thank you for watching.